electrifying kick returner as well that literally had the permission to return every single kick. And when I look at combining Norv Turner with Cordell Patterson, I see big things on the horizon.
I have no quarrel with that. When Patterson was drafted, he was projected as a first-round talent who was going to take a couple of years to develop.
Yeah.
Now, as he's had a chance to spend a year in the league, he obviously is a huge threat in the return game. One of the things that always ticks me off is I think that if you have a player who you drafted as a position player and he scores a special teams touchdown, you should get points for it.
Yes.
Which you don't, at least in most of the leagues.
Do.
Yeah, in the leagues I've played in, you don't. I have a problem with that. I don't know. I'm not sold on Patterson as a complete receiver, and I'm not saying he won't be.
Yeah.
The guy who's jumping out of this group at me, and I alluded to this before, if C.J. Spiller is healthy, he's going to be a monster. And so, again, I got to stop taking everybody I've said so far as if he's healthy. That's why I never win my league. But Spiller, I think, is another guy in that group who's very capable.
All right.
Can I go first this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, round 5. Who are you taking in round 4 that has an average draft position of round 5, Hub?
Larry Fitzgerald. How this guy, who I think is arguably the second best receiver in football, you can't put anybody ahead of Megatron.
Yeah.
Now, I understand the answer is Carson Palmer. Will he throw it to him? Will he throw it to the defense? Will it be somebody else? But Larry Fitzgerald is just potentially, you're talking about a 100-catch, 1,400-yard, 15-touchdown guy. To get him in the fourth round, I reach for him.
So the Cardinals have acknowledged that Larry's lost a step. So maybe he doesn't separate his but he's such a big target. The leaping ability is still there, and he catches everything you throw at him.
Yeah. The guy is world class. And in that round, that's what I'd be looking at.
I'm going to take a much riskier route, and I'm going to try Percy Harvin. And talk about injury risk. Percy Harvin's at the top of the list, but freakish athlete when healthy. He was fantastic when Christian Ponder was his quarterback, for Pete's sake. And in an offense that really needs a wide receiver to step up in Seattle, and they paid that first-round pick for him, I feel like he should be sitting on a good year.
I'll tell you what bothers me about that. Your perfect logic. I have no problem with that.
Sure.
And I'm not making light of this in any way. But this is a man with an acknowledged problem with migraines.
Yes.
And my limited understanding, practicing medicine without a license, I practice law without a license, I do all these things, that doesn't go away. It gets better and worse, but it's the kind of thing that tends to be recurring throughout your lifetime. And he lost half a season to those migraines in Minnesota. That almost makes him my first undraftable player of the night.
Right.
He's kind of off my board, just because that scares me a little bit.
It's certainly high risk, high reward play. All right, round 6. My reach around player in round 6, guy I would take in round 5 is a guy you mentioned earlier, Rashad Jennings, having a dynamite preseason, and he was good with the Raiders. This is a much better offense that's focused on rushing, and I loved what I saw a couple weeks ago, Hub, when he broke through the line of scrimmage and outran in a secondary for a 74-yard touchdown. You don't think of Rashad Jennings as having breakaway speed, but when he outran cornerbacks. I like Rashad Jennings a lot.
If anybody knows what to do with a running back, it's Tom Coughlin.
Isn't that the truth?
You got Ben McAdoo. Without Kevin Gilbride for the first time, it seems like in forever.
Yeah.
I suppose you look at that, but it's still Tom Coughlin's team. So the other guy in that group who intrigues me is Trent Richardson. We also talked about the Colts kind of rebuilding the scheme in the offensive line to make that work. But I'm going to go with you on this one. I like Rashad Jennings, too.
All right. All right. Okay, next up, round 7. Mentioned Joique Bell's name earlier. He's my selection round 7 as a guy I would take one round early. I believe he becomes much more of the workhorse back. Reggie Bush goes back to more of his Saints role as a pass-catching back. And, I think we saw that trends happening last year. It's a new offense, new coaches. We don't know for sure, but I just feel like Joique Bell is sitting on a potentially breakout season where he separates himself from Reggie Bush.
All right. This is going to be really hard for me because I believe that this guy should be in jail right now.
Wow.
And if he's not in jail, he should have been suspended for at least a year. But this is fantasy football, and he's eligible.
Yeah.
Ray Rice was a first or second round pick a year ago.
He was.
Now you're looking at him in the 7th round.
Yep.
I got to take him in the 6th.
Okay.
I don't let him anywhere near my wife or my daughters, but I'm going to take him in the 6th.
Round 8. Perhaps the rookie receiver with the best chance of
I got to ask you a question.
Yes.
I got to ask you a question.
Yes, yes.
I'm assuming this is your draft board.
This is average draft position of, this is not my draft board.
Okay.
This is the average draft position from thousands and thousands of leagues across America.
Okay.
So thank you for giving me the chance to explain this. Average draft position of thousands and thousands of leagues across America that have occurred since August 1st. This is how they're actually falling. This is the actual order of thousands of drafts. So this is the reality of where they're falling right now.
That answers my question, and it's not the guy I would take.
Yeah, that's fine.
But Frank Gore in the 8th round seems kind of silly to me too. Although we did mention all the other backs are going to be pushing him from behind. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Frank Gore is a perfectly good selection here. I'm going to go with the rookie receiver with the best chance, I believe, of making an impact this year, and that's Brandon Cooks. Now, while the Saints do spread the ball around to a lot of different receivers, they need a deep threat. And he's got Drew Brees throwing him the ball. Sammy Watkins is trying to make do with E.J. Manuel. Mike Evans with Josh McCown. It's such a good pairing for him that Brandon Cooks is a deep threat that Marcus Colson does not give them. I like him.
Everybody is raving about Cooks so far. I understand and I agree. I'm not going to take Gore. I just was surprised to see him that low. I'm going to go here with a kid that I mentioned a little while ago. I think the biggest beneficiary of Deshaun Jackson showing up in Washington is Jordan Reed. This kid was exciting when they found him in midseason last year. And teams are going to take away Deshaun Jackson. I don't think Pierre Garçon, for the year that he had last year, scares teams all that much. I think before they figure out what Jordan Reed could do, he could have a big first half of the season.
This is going to be another case, so we'll say, if he stays healthy, the concussions. He's already had 3 in a young career. All right, round 9. A lot of guys that I like here, and I'm not pandering. My guy out of this is Jay Cutler, and it's not close. You can see, everybody's got my cheat sheet. He's my number 5 quarterback. I think Jay Cutler throws 35 touchdowns this season, and if you believe that he's got 2 top 10 wide receivers, why wouldn't he be ranked that high? Throw in the best pass-catching back in the NFL in Matt Forte, add in a quality tight end. I think you're looking at a 35-plus touchdown season for Jay Cutler.
You may be right, and I have no smart-ass comments, no argument. He hasn't come close in 8 years in the league, and he's just a guy who's got to do it for me before I buy that. I suspect you may be right. I think he's got a chance to have a really big year. I've spent a fair amount of time around him with him the last couple of weeks, and I think he's changed a little bit. I am impressed by what he's done so far, and I think that he's really comfortable with Trestman. He's got these weapons. He could have a very big year. But we've been predicting this for the last 4 or 5 years. Something always seems to happen.
But don't you think the difference this year is Mark Trestman and second year in that offense? No?
I think he's better suited for it.
Yeah.
The fact that he has been his own worst enemy his first 8 years in the league, even though he appears to be changed to me, he's got to prove he can go 17 weeks without being his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And until we see it, I hope you're right, because my life is easier when the Chicago Bears are having a good year, and he's going to have to. In that group, let me just go back there for one second.
Yeah, you bet.
The guy, and I've never been a big fan of his, but I think he ended up in the perfect spot, and he's going to be the perfect garbage man, is Golden Tate. Golden Tate, I think, is going to put up some really big numbers this year, because with them quadruple teaming Megatron, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him.
And he's a great athlete. Yeah. People don't realize how good an athlete Golden Tate is. Very good after the catch. Round number 10. My guy here, Carlos Hyde. I think you and I just basically differ a little bit on Frank Gore. I see a guy who's winding down. I think Carlos Hyde at some point starts, not the season. Frank Gore, I think he'll start week 1, but I think at some point it turns into Carlos Hyde's job. I think he's just playing better right now.
Yeah, I was kidding before. If Jim Harbaugh drafts him, I guess it's got to be okay with me. So, whether he's the guy in this group or not, I think DeAndre Hopkins in Bill O'Brien's offense is liable to have a huge breakout season. I wish I felt better about Ryan Fitzpatrick and whoever's going to be throwing the football to him.
I know.
But I like Hopkins a lot. You know, Stephen Ridley can be a monster if he holds on to the football.
Yep.
He hasn't so far. I love Darren Sproles. He just doesn't get enough quantity to be a consistent fantasy difference maker. So I would agree. I think Hyde's an interesting pick there.
Round 11. I'm going to go as my reach a round player with Devonta Freeman. And Devonta Freeman, Steven Jackson was borderline awful last year, already hurt this year. He's going to miss the whole preseason on the bad hamstring. Devonta Freeman's getting all the reps. And say what you want about Hard Knocks, but every now and again you can glean a little something out of that you might not otherwise get. They were recording when Steven Jackson got hurt, and they've got the mics on the coaches. And the coaches turned to another, and the only name they brought up, Devonta Freeman. There was no talk about Jaquez Rodgers or anything else. They said one name, Devonta Freeman. He's looked good so far in preseason. I see him as perhaps even being the week 1 starter over Steven Jackson.
I'll give you this one comes with restrictions.
All right.
I can't imagine that we're not going to know. Well, we'll know by opening day, but if we don't know by the night we draft, I'm trying to remember, I think I'm drafted next Thursday night.
Yep.
What Josh Gordon's penalty is,
yeah,
I'm going to risk a 10th round pick here.
I like that.
Now,
I like that.
assuming that I know and he's gone for the year or 10
obviously
games,
not, yes.
then I don't have to.
Yes.
But if we don't know, and then if Goodell shocks us and only gives us 4 games,
yeah,
I'll sit on him for 4 games. Assuming that's not the case, I go with Dwayne Bowe here. I know he's a bit of a risky character, but he puts up big-time numbers. He puts up reasonable numbers every year.
Reasonable numbers, yes. I'm a little worried about the finger injury he's got. When Andy Reid says his finger is shot,
yeah,
that worries me just a little bit about him. So he's on my radar a little.
Cut it off. Ronnie Lott did. Worked for him.
If Ronnie Lott can cut off his finger and still get plenty of interceptions. All right, final round of the reach around. Round 12. I'm going to roll the dice here on I'm going to take Noshawn Moreno out of this group, Hub, because I don't trust Lamar Miller at the stripe. He's proven himself to be lousy there, and he could be a guy that just finds his way, muddies his way to 8 touchdowns this year, and I can get him in round 11.
I agree. I mean, Cecil Shorts is another guy on my all-name team. I love having Cecil Shorts as a wide receiver. But when you put that group up, Marino jumped right off at me. I would agree in this group that he's the guy.
All right. So what do you think about the reach around? You like it? Ah. All right.
Paul, if I can, I just want to remind everybody again one more time, or some of you who just joined us, on your table you will find some registration coupons here. If you have not found it yet or filled it out yet, please fill it out. Your server will take it from you, and you are registering to win a Brandon Marshall jersey. So just fill out the slip at your table, give it to your serving. We will make a drawing at 9 o'clock tonight, your server, not your serving. And you're going to have to be here to win, so you got to stick around till 9. But we're sticking around to 9, so I hope you are too. And we're going to give away a Brandon Marshall jersey to somebody. Also, for those of you who have felt that someday you want to do what we're doing here, we're not really doing this here. I guess it's just us and you in the room. What's that camera for, by the way? What are we doing here? So we're on the internet. I didn't know that.
I didn't either. We just did a whole segment called The Reach Around. Who knew?
I almost said shit twice. Attention fantasy football fans. You can do that on the web, can't you? It's like cable, right? Yeah, I can say whatever I want. Attention fantasy football fans. The Score and Bud Light are out to find the 2014 Bud Light Fantasy Football Expert. This person will co-host the Bud Light Fantasy Football Preview Show every Sunday morning on 670thescore.com. So if you want to get in this business, you want to get your start, this is the way to do it. Keep up-to-date information on the Score Fantasy Football page as well. Plus, you'll be the envy of all fantasy football players in Chicago. Now, if you guys think that this is for you, this is next week. You can stop by Shoeless Joe's in Rosemont on Tuesday night, hit Crazy Pour in Villa Park on Wednesday night, or Fat Sam's in Orland Park on Thursday for your chance to audition. Dream job for any fantasy football fan. This is the dream job you've got to have. Plus, you'll be part of the SCORE team. That's a little overrated, but you might want to try it anyway. Oh, I just said that on the web, didn't I? For more information, visit, Mitch, I'm kidding. Mitch, it's all just for fun. This is the dream job. I already read that. Visit the events page on cbschicago.com. It is presented by Bud Light, the perfect beer for whatever happens. And guys, I just want to say once again, you can visit those spots to audition. The best place all over. I mean, I know that there's a famous Dave's up in Algonquin, but my daughter's been hitting these places regularly. Great, great host tonight. Can we have just another round of applause for your servers, for everybody here at Famous Dave's? We really appreciate you guys letting us come in and do this tonight, and we thank you all for the great food and the great drinks.
Coming up next, how to identify a sleeper running back and why it matters. There are specific things you can look for to identify them. We'll even go out on a limb and tell you who we think they might be. I want to start here. Here are your, these are the 5 players that we know, based on history, are not going to meet their average draft position. These 12 guys, 5 of them historically are not going to, and they're going to fail badly. And even the top 4 guys are not safe. In the last 5 years, 6 of them have been absolute flops. It's a Ray Rice comes to mind last year. C.J. Spiller comes to mind. Doug Martin comes to mind from last year. All burned a lot of people in this audience, right? Yes. I am a believer in avoiding running backs for 4 full rounds. 4 rounds. And this is why the failure rate is so high, and you can find help later. Let's look at the last 3 seasons in the top 12 of running backs. Look at the average draft position for Nosha Moreno, the 51st running back off the board. Running back. DeMarco Murray, the 17th. Eddie Lacy, the 23rd running back. Fred Jackson, the 43rd. Danny Woodhead, the 44th. These were guys you got late, and here they are in the top 12. The year before, more guys in the 20s, 30s, and even 50s for Alfred Morris. Year before that, same thing. Our top 12 littered with guys that you could get late. It's the most volatile position, and it's also the position where you will find your sleepers. A couple of key stats for you here. Every year since 2009, at least one running back ranked 50th or worst has finished in the top 6. There's guys that come out of nowhere.
He ranked 50th on your draft board, not 50th among running backs.
This is 50th average draft position of all of the fantasy drafts.
Of all the positions.
Of just the running back position.
The 50th ranked running back has been in the top 6?
Nosha Moreno last year.
Wow.
Alfred Morris the year before that. Yes.
Well, Morris was a rookie. That's kind of cheating. But yeah.
You remember, nobody knew it was going to be Alfred Morris a few years ago. Over the past 5 years, 14 running backs in the 30th or 1st have ranked as RB1s. So, our goals here, as we try to identify sleepers, we are looking for a running back that we can hit a home run with. We're trying to find running backs with an average draft position or 20th or worse who could finish as an RB1 on your team. That means 12 or higher, 12 teams in your league. Who can be an RB1 for your squad? Here's how we do it, the traits of a sleeper. There are 5, 6, or 7 guys every year, and they have common traits. We're going to tell you those traits to help you identify who they might be. Number 1, talented backup runner gets a chance due to injury. C.J. Spiller was that guy a couple of years ago. Darren McFadden's been that guy. Ricky Williams going back a ways. That's the first trait. Second trait, a bounce back over public reaction to one bad season. Doug Martin might be that guy.
Ray Rice could be that guy.
Ray Rice is an excellent example of that guy as a possibility. Players who fit that trend, We had DeMarco Murray last year. We had Frank Gore year before that. It was Matt Forte in 2010 after he had a down 2009. Trait number 3, a former flameout with elite pedigree finally plays to potential. This can happen a lot. This can be guys who were at one point, by the way, that's Reggie Bush and Kim Kardashian, if you're wondering who that is. So, and a guy who at one point was thought to be elite, Reggie Bush thought to be an elite player, finally plays to his potential. That's
what are him and Kim doing there?
I don't know what's happening between those two right there.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
Speaking of reach arounds.
And that's a big reach.
That is a big reach. Around Kim Kardashian, that's a very big reach. Trait number 4, little-known backs that thrive in the zone blocking scheme in particular. Of course, the guys that come immediately to mind, Arian Foster, zone blocking scheme. Alfred Morris, zone blocking scheme. Zone blocking scheme backs can come out of nowhere when the zone blocking scheme can click. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always work. But when it clicks and you get the right back, it can pay off big time. Next. Everybody thinks that a veteran is going to fall off the table, but he doesn't. Noshan Moreno last year. Fred Jackson last year are examples of that happening. Trait number 6. A veteran free agent thrives after being gets a new opportunity to be a featured back with a new team. Anybody know who that guy in the upper left is? Nice job. Danny Woodhead's that mop-headed kid. Yeah, well done over there. That was very good. Danny Woodhead goes to a new team, ends up thriving. It can happen. Peyton Hillis is in here. We've seen it happen before. Maybe nobody more than Turner, the guy I've got down here. Michael Turner spent all those years languishing in San Diego behind LaDainian Tomlinson.
The burner. Northern Illinois kid.
Michael Turner. Mm-hmm. Highly touted guy finally breaks out of a timeshare. Very, very popular. We've seen that happen before, and a lot of times it takes a year or two for that highly touted player to finally come to the forefront. It can happen 7 times in the last 6 years. We've seen that trait happen. So who are these guys that can help us? Well, the first bit was a talented backup gets a chance due to injury, and well, you can never really guess injury. I mean, it's impossible to guess injury, but here are some guys. Were there an injury? Here's some really good backups that could end up doing well.
Yeah, the other guy I might add to that list would be James Starks in Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lacey did get banged up last year, and when he did, Starks finally became the player that a lot of people thought he might be, so you could add him there too.
James Starks was a different player last year. Mm-hmm. That's a very good addition to this one. So here are guys, again, last pick of the draft that you can take that are talented enough that were there an injury, they could succeed. Little-known backs that could thrive in the zone blocking scheme. A couple of guys that can emerge here. Terrence West, we mentioned him earlier, put up video game style numbers. Kyle Shanahan implementing zone blocking scheme in Cleveland. Maybe it's Bernard Pierce or Lorenzo Taliaferro. I know you like Ray Rice. Maybe it's going to be Ray Rice, but we're looking for sleepers, guys that are drafted lower. These guys get drafted lower and have an opportunity to succeed. Ray Rice has got a higher draft position. Here's where a veteran unexpectedly holds on the backup. We had Noshan Moreno and Fred Jackson last year. This year, how about Frank Gore? How about Steven? I don't like either one, frankly, Frank Gore or Steven Jackson, but maybe it's not. Maybe it is them. But how about Fred Jackson? Again, average draft position's terrible right now. 10th round average. He's the 42nd running back who got all of the goal line carries for the Bills last year.
And the remarkable thing about him is he's a 33-year-old running back in the NFL.
33.
And yet he's healthier than C.J. Spiller. He stays on the field for the most part. So certainly a guy you want to look at as your 3rd or 4th running back.
Former flameout player finally plays up to his potential from where he was originally drafted. Mark Ingram. He's burned a lot of fantasy owners over the year. The Saints have never used him predictably, but maybe this is the year. And the reasons for hope, week 4 last year, he went crazy. Yeah. and then in week 15 went 13 for 83, and then in the playoff games they used him extensively, Hub, in the playoffs, presumably when the games mean the most.
Right, but it's also not unusual that teams play him differently in the playoffs. Even Sean Payton got a little bit conservative. What bothers me about this is what we said when we were talking about him before. I just don't know that Sean Payton will ever commit enough to one back to let him be that guy. The other guy I would consider putting on this list is Trent Richardson in Indianapolis for the reasons that we talked about.
Trent Richardson does make sense on this list. Free agent signings with the new team can work out. Toby Gerhart, Rashad Jennings, Ben Tate are all candidates here. Of those group, I like Rashad Jennings a lot more than the other two.
Yeah, I don't trust Ben Tate for some reason, and Toby Gerhart is not the athlete these other two kids are. I think Jennings is the clear choice in that trio.
Jennings has got a bit of a timeshare issue with Andre Williams, and I think Andre Williams will get plenty of goal line looks, but there's still enough to go around. Talented first or second year player finally emerges. Well, or emerges because he's a rookie, emerges right off the bat. Bishop Sankey makes sense. He was the first running back taken in the draft last year. He's competing with guys he should easily beat out. Sean Green, Dexter McCluster are pretty much non-factors. Carlos Hyde's a candidate in this category. Second-round pick this year. Frank Gore, obviously much older player, wore down in the second half of last year. Christian Michael for the Seahawks, second-round pick last year. Marshawn Lynch also getting older. He's wearing down, and his contract ends this year. They may want to give Christian Michael more of a look.
Yeah, as I recall, though, Michael was a bit of a reach as an athlete in the fourth round or the third round. I think it was the fourth round, and I'm sorry, second round pick.
Second round.
Most teams had him rated in the
as
fourth
a third
round,
or fourth rounder, yeah.
And he was taken in the second round, and didn't really show that much last year to justify the Seahawks' excitement. But the Seahawks have been pretty good about letting kids wait at various positions 2-3 years and then having them come and play. So certainly somebody to keep an eye on in this spot.
Bounce back players after one bad year. Guys who had a good track record and could bounce back. Well, here's another category for your Trent Richardson right here.
Yeah. Well, it's all about
booing. I love it. How about the booing on Trent Richardson?
Well, is it because he burned you last year?
Well, he's a first-round pick last year.
Yeah.
You know, people blew pick 5 of their draft on him and Doug Martin and C.J. Spiller. Yeah. Other guys, here's your Ray Rice. We've talked about him several times now. Darren Sproles, who dropped off badly last year. Eagles liked him enough to trade for him.
Right, but the key where Sproles, again, is different from all these other guys is you're talking about finding a sleeper who can be your show pony, be your number one back. Darren Sproles with Shady McCoy, unless McCoy gets hurt, just isn't going to get the opportunity to put up those kind of numbers for you.
So what do you do with all of this information that I'm giving you? One is DTO, what I call do the opposite. Do not draft a running back for the first 4 rounds. It's crazy, I know, but the talent's going to be there later. You can find these guys, and we've just helped you identify a bunch of them. It's a great opportunity to avoid these guys. Let's look at what a roster could look like if you actually waited at least 4 rounds before taking a running back. Here we go, Jimmy Graham, Jordy Nelson, Keenan Allen, Roddy White, and then you start stacking up running backs. They won't all hit, but some of them will hit. And if just 2 of those running backs out of the 5 you see there hit, you're set because you know Jimmy Graham's going to be good. You know Jordy Nelson's going to be good. And these are the wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. It's the same good guys every year because they perform as expected. Running backs don't. Here's another example of a way you could look at it. Brandon Marshall, Gronkowski, Garcon, Harvin, and then a slew of, again, these running backs in here. And with my guy Jay Cutler at quarterback, another way to approach an opposite draft. So, there you go. Helping you identify some late-round sleepers that allow you to then take elite players at the beginning of your draft. First 4 rounds, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end. So there you go. Traits of a sleeper running back. What do you think? Good stuff? All right. Hub, I think maybe I am here for 10 minutes. I'm catching the last flight back home And so I'm here for 10 minutes. You're here for about 20 minutes. You want to do a little Q&A with the audience?
I think it's about time. I'm guessing some people came here with some fantasy questions tonight, so we would love to answer them for you. And maybe, I don't know that there's a third mic, so I'm just going to head out here.
That sounds good. I got one requirement on this, Hub. No questions that only help your team. And really what that means is no questions about more than one player. I don't want to hear, should I keep this guy or that guy? But if you want to talk about a player, that's great. Just something that can help the whole room, not just your squad. There you go.
All right, we got a hand up over here. Let me make my way through. Excuse me, guys. I'm going to bring you the mic so everybody can hear your question, and fire away.
I would like to know a little bit more about IDP. Give me some like IDP hints in the beginning of...
Yeah, he's talking about individual defensive players. There are guys who make a living studying that. I'm not one of them. It's a whole separate deal, and industry numbers show it's only 4% of leagues that are playing IDP. So honestly, I'm not in an IDP league, and I'm not a specialist. I'm sorry. It's just not my area of expertise.
I will tell you that the obvious, because everybody's going to take J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, if he stays on the field, is going to put up monster numbers. He's one of the few guys I would break my no rookie rule for. He's going to be a big difference maker. You want to look at a guy like maybe even a Lamar Houston who comes to Chicago, who's going to be given a chance to do things that he hasn't done before. You want to look at a guy like Tim Jennings, who is not one of the best corners in the league, but leads the league in interceptions over the last, he's tied, I think, for the league over the last 3 years. They're a lot harder to identify. Depends on how you're scoring points. But, you're looking for a couple more breakout pass rushers. You're going to get points for sacks. There's no question about that. I'm trying to think of kids that were on the cusp last year. Marcel Darius in Buffalo for an inside player, I think could put up some big sack numbers. So, you've got to identify for everybody here how you're scoring on defense. Those are just a couple guys who will pop right to mind.
All right.
So, who else we got here with questions? I got some over here. Good, we'll make our way over here. Excuse me, please. We got time for both of you. We'll come to the bar first.
Yeah, Charge, with your running back theory, what would you do if you had a top 3 pick? Would you skip on a running back?
Well, that's okay. So a little more detail on doing the opposite. I would take running backs with the first 4 picks. Adrian Peterson, Matt Forte, Jamal Charles, and LaShawn McCoy. After that, I'm not taking another running back in the first round and for the next 4 rounds. So those 4 backs to me are so elite and so proven, I would go to war with them. But if I don't have one of the first 4 picks, I'm not going that way. And if you're in an auction, that means I'd spend on those guys, but I'm not spending on the next 15 running backs. I'm putting my money on sure thing wide receivers and tight ends especially, and then I'm targeting Jay Cutler, my guy, who's right now got a 10th round ADP, and it's only costing you about $6 in the auction.
Oh, Charge, he's got his head so far up Cutler's rear end he doesn't know what to do. Hey, here we go.
How do you feel about Brandon Cooks with the weapons that Drew Brees has around him?
I talked about Brandon Cooks a few minutes ago, so I'll yield this one to you. Do you share my feelings about Brandon Cooks? Maybe, Jimmy Graham's always going to be the 1A target there, but they need a downfield speed guy.
A lot of this is about being the fit. And unlike Darren Sproles, who was always one of 3 choices at running back, Brandon Cooks is going to be a starting wideout. Now, the Saints love to run 3 or 4 guys on and off the field at the position, but everybody I've talked to is raving about Brandon Cooks. And so, again, we keep talking about this rule about drafting rookies. You got to be careful where you do it. You can't go too high, but if you took 4 or 5 rookies out of this draft, Cooks is probably the most talked about from the analysts that I'm talking to. I'm going to get you guys. I'm just going in the order I saw the hands here.
Do you view more teams in the NFL becoming split-back teams, or is that just a trend for this year?
Paul, did you get that?
Nope, give it to me one more time.
Do you view more NFL teams becoming split-back teams, or is that just a trend of this year?
For some reason, I still didn't get that.
Do you think more teams in the league are going to be 2-back offenses, or is that just kind of a trend that's developed in the last year or two?
Well, Hubman, you're in a great position to answer this, but increasingly teams are using a running back by committee approach and, trying to preserve the legs of their guys, and it's what makes those rare few running backs that are good and get all of the carries, like a Matt Forte, so incredibly valuable. So, yeah, it's an increasing tendency, and it drives up the value for those guys that you can trust that get all the work.
It's a fit with exactly what Paul was saying. if you've got one of the top even 7 or 8, if you've got an Eddie Lacy at 6 or maybe a DeMarco Murray, you're not going to take carries away from them. But if you don't have one of those top 5, 6, 7, 8, then you want to get a couple who you can trust, because if you're an NFL coach, you don't care about fantasy points. And so that's why you're going to go that way.
My questions are on the quarterback. How soon do you draft a quarterback, and who do you take first?
Yeah, so when to take a quarterback. If you decide you want to take one of the big 3 quarterbacks, I'm all for it. Drew Brees is sitting on a monstrous season. The schedule's so easy. And if you want to go Manning, you want to go with Manning, you want to go with Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers, great. No problem with that. But if you're not going to take one of those 3 early, let that position slide, and let's go get Tony Romo in the 10th. Let's go get Jay Cutler in the 10th. Those are guys you're going to be able to get late, and they're going to be very good for you. It's a deep, deep, deep year at quarterback.
Did I have another one here?
I was just going to wonder, on like trading, you have a high first-round pick. Would you trade down to have a lower pick and a first round, the first pick in the second round? Would you do that?
The question is, where's the best spot to be in the first round if you can position yourself anywhere? And if you're up front, should you trade back? Which usually you can do, right? If you're sitting at position 3, usually somebody will trade down to 8 if you want to. See, what I love about being at a position, say position 8, is your first 2 picks are going to be Des Bryant and Alshon Jeffrey. And I love that. I'm not risking a running back in that spot, and I can get great receivers. So I love being at the back end of the draft because of that reason. So even better if you can get Jimmy Graham, who I love keying my whole team on Jimmy Graham. So you fit in right around spot 6. Nobody's got the guts to take a tight end to that spot, and you get Jimmy Graham at 6, and I think you're in a fantastic spot. If you really think nobody's going to go tight end, then go even later. I've seen Jimmy Graham go as late as pick 10. Yeah.
Paul, I had a question off mic here about defenses. I said my top 4, just off the top of my head, they're pretty obvious. Seattle, San Francisco, Carolina, and New Orleans.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with Frisco. Navarro Bowman out till midseason at least. Alden Smith's going to be suspended for a while. They're still probably a top 5, top 6 defense. Anybody you like that I'm leaving out?
I know, Hub. I am exactly with you on San Francisco's defense. I'm not picking him in any of my leagues. Too many problems. They lost players in the offseason. All the injuries. Alden Smith, who knows? The team I like, and the team I think is going to have more wins this year in their division, St. Louis. Best defensive line in football. They are going to get a ton of sacks. They're going to get, when you get that much pressure on the quarterback, you get interceptions, you get fumbles from quarterbacks. St. Louis is a top 5 fantasy defense, and a great sleeper for your team.
Very nice. We've got another one here.
What team do you view has the biggest fantasy potential players with the least difficult season?
There's something about you and I where I'm just not meant to hear your words. I'm sorry. What do you say?
Which team has the most players with fantasy potential, yet the least difficult season?
The most fantasy potential, like the highest risk and highest reward guy? Is that what you're asking? Rob Gronkowski's the highest high-risk, high-reward guy, right? So all the injuries that he's ever had, but over the course of his career, he's good for almost 1 touchdown a game. So Gronkowski, to me, is the boldest pick you could possibly make. You'll have to take him at the end of the second round or the beginning of the third round. If you've got the guts and it pays off and you play 16 games, you've got a great find. Or maybe he gets another freak injury. And would that surprise anybody? Probably not.
All right, we're going to take one more for Paul, and then we're going to send him to the airport. I'm going to stick with you guys for a little while longer, but this is the last one for Charge.
With the elite tight ends being off the board, and let's say you're picking in the 11th, 12th round, who would you consider a sleeper tight end?
The best deep sleeper tight end, Travis Kelce of Kansas City Chiefs. They've got nobody else to throw to. Dwayne Bowe's suspended for a game, and then he's got the finger, and Jamal Charles. Donnie Avery's no second receiver. That's absurd. He'd be unrosterable in Chicago. So Travis Kelce is a great athlete. He missed all of last year with injury. He's having a dynamite training camp in preseason. Already scored twice in the preseason. That's, if you really slough that tight end position, Travis Kelce's a guy, you can get him even later than the 12th round. He's my favorite deep sleeper at that position.
All right, guys, so one of the really neat things for all of us is we get to stay in Chicago. Unfortunately, Charch has got to go back to the Twin Cities.
Yes.
But we really appreciate him coming down tonight, putting the program together for you.
Thank you very much for coming. I also want to thank Famous Dave's for hosting, and especially want to thank the Score 670. You can hear me every Thursday from noon to 12:30. Been doing this for like 5 years now. We're coming back for another season. I believe that's going to start 1 week from today, noon to 12:30 with all of our fantasy talk. Chicago, we love talking to you all season long. Look forward to seeing you again, hopefully at this same event again next year.
Guy's like a freaking NASCAR driver. I don't even know when I'm on the Score. It's just, he pop up every once in a while. Really a pleasure getting to work with Paul. What we're going to do is, I'm going to give some stuff away. That's the fun part, is we're going to give you some prizes here. I know we came for fantasy football tonight. I'm guessing there's at least 1 or 2 Bears questions in the crowd, or short of that, Bears, Packers, NFL. Any questions you want, if you've got more fantasy questions. I'm kind of going to try and work with you and work the mic at the same time. So what other questions we got here? Let me see a hand. If there's here we go. Because if there's no other questions, you all got to look at pictures of my grandson.
Yeah, this is a question for you, Hub. Do you think that McCown ought to send half of his $10 million to Mark Trestman?
No, I think he ought to keep every penny for himself. Mark's getting paid enough, but your point is well taken. And the thing that sometimes gets missed here is this perception of Mark Trestman, the quarterback whisperer, Mark Trestman, the great developer of quarterbacks. The truth is, if you look at his track record and you connect the time that he's been in these cities with these quarterbacks who've had their careers resurrected, it's not usually when he's the coach. It's not that he's a brilliant quarterback coach, it's that he's a brilliant offensive coach. It's much like what they've done with the offensive line. It's scheme-driven. He's got a really quarterback-friendly system, and he knows how to make these kids comfortable in his system. So you're absolutely correct. Mark Trestman deserves most of the credit for what happened to Josh McCown last year. I would also tell all of you who did not ever get the pleasure of meeting Josh McCown, it could not have happened to a better kid. If there was ever a guy that I'm thrilled to see get $10 million, and I'm not like that because I'm usually very envious and very petty, and I want to know why I didn't get it, but it couldn't have happened to a better kid. And so in that regard, good for Trestman and good for Josh. Anything else? Yes, sir. We got 2 right here. Here, we'll stay here first, then we'll go next.
I was just wondering how you felt about the Santonio Holmes signing.
How do I feel about the Santonio Holmes signing? Well, the hardest part is to stop calling him San Antonio and call him Santonio. I've heard that. That's like everybody on the air. How many times are you going to have idiots calling Alshon Jeffries? I mean, it's been 3 years now, guys. I think it's been enough. Santonio Holmes, I really believe when they signed him, was here on a 2-week tryout. And there was absolutely no guarantee that he was going to be here next week. Now, talking to Aaron Cromer on, what day is it? Thursday. Talking to Aaron on Tuesday, he said that Holmes looked fantastic out on the practice field. So that tells you that they found something at least better at number 3 than what they had. And you've got to understand what number 3 means for this team right now. Mark Trestman does not love having 3 wides on the field. He'll do it. They did it about half the time last year with Earl Bennett. But their production comes more often when they're in 2 wides and 2 tights. Santonio Holmes is the one guy now who, if you lose an Alshon Jeffrey or a Brandon Marshall for 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe he can go out there and give you some production. They did not trust Josh Morgan at all for that. Now, Morgan is probably number 4. Holmes is number 3. They're still dangerously thin if they lose one of the front 2, but they're better off than they were. Now, of course, the other piece is what if he is still Santonio Holmes, if you know what I mean. And there's no guessing. I don't know. He was a bad guy in Pittsburgh. He was a bad guy in New York. He's been on his best behavior for 3 days. He's been wonderful with the media. He's been very accommodating. Maybe he's a changed man. These kids that are used to making millions a year and are suddenly unemployed for 8 months, that can be their comeuppance a little bit. He's only 30 years old, You know, I never thought Brandon Marshall would change. He obviously has. Maybe Holmes has as well. So, will you, sir?
My question's about the Bears defense. How do you think that with adding, a revamped D-line, adding Kyle Fuller, and, looking at new safeties this year, that they actually have a chance of being something respectable that can actually help the Bears make the playoffs and actually, later on in the draft, maybe even help a fantasy team?
All right, one of the things about these handheld mics is you've got to really swallow the mic and project into it. So the question about the Bears defense, do I think they did enough to be more than just average? Can they maybe be difference makers by the time they come together later in the season? Might they be a fantasy pick later in the year? My instinct is no. I think what they did is they threw a whole bunch of quantity at this thing, much like they did with the offensive line last year, and everybody's up and raving and all excited. Here's the reality of it. Lamar Houston might be the best three-technique tackle in the NFL. I do not believe he's a defensive end. They're going to play him about 50-50 in both spots. Willie Young is a classic underachiever at Detroit. They got him on the cheap. The Lions didn't want him back after starting 15 games last year. I don't know why he's going to be a difference maker here. He's a great athlete. Maybe he will be. Maybe Paul Pasqualone's the answer. There is no guarantee in Jared Allen at 32 that you've got any more than you had in Julius Peppers at 34. I love Allen. I love what he brings. He's been a pleasure to be around. So you got a whole bunch of maybes here, okay? They didn't do anything at linebacker. At safety, they brought in a bunch of career backups. And then the late addition was Adrian Wilson. So if Adrian Wilson is Adrian Wilson, that's a big difference. And we're going to find out tomorrow night. He's got to emerge tomorrow night, or he's probably not going to make the team. Ryan Mundy, 5 years in the league of backup. Danny McCray, same thing. M.D. Jennings started 15 games for the Packers at safety last year. They didn't want him back, and they were as concerned about the position as the Bears. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of people, but are they better? Now, that's the bad news, all right? The good news is, yes, I like Kyle Fuller, and more importantly, if Jeremiah Ratliff and Lance Briggs and DJ Williams and Peanut Tillman are on the field for 14 or 15 weeks, the defense is already better. A lot of it was the injuries. If Mel Tucker can coach them, and we don't know if he can, but if he can, they are better. So I think they will be improved. Are they going to be difference makers this year? Are they a fantasy D? I'm struggling to see that, unless Jared Allen still has more in the tank than I think he does. So one, maybe two more questions. Yes, sir.
So I have a buddy who's an Ohio State fan.
All right, that's the end of that question. No, I'm just kidding.
He wants to know why you were so hard on Mike Tomczak.
Hard on Mike Tomczak? Was it T-Zach who asked? No, Mike and I are good buddies. I don't know why. T-Zach never got on the field often enough in Chicago for me to be hard on him. It's Mike and I are really good friends and have been all along. And all kidding aside, I mean, for the most part, he was the best. I'm not sure. There must be something I'm missing in that question. Generally, I went to Michigan. I hate Ohio State players. I don't hide behind that. I'm also an adult now, so I kind of try and move past that. I'm not really an adult, but I'm supposed to be. So, but no, T-Zach and I have always been great. I'm not sure where that one comes from. Anything else, guys? Back over here. All right, we're going to get our last question from the man in green in the back corner of the room.
Yeah, Hub, I just want to know when they're going to start investigating Michigan athletes. When are they going to start investigating Michigan football players for,
The question is, when are they going to start investigating Michigan players? The answer is obvious. When they start cheating, no. Guys, here's the reality of it, okay? Michigan cheats, Notre Dame cheats, Alabama cheats, Florida cheats. The difference is that Ohio State is recruiting at the state penitentiary. So that's where that all breaks down. All right, we got some shit to give away, don't we? I'm sorry, it's not that. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Come on. How are we going to do this, John? How are we going to do this? All right, just so you know, before we pull the ticket, we're going to give away this nice Chicago. The Chicago Bears hat's going to go first. I don't want somebody to think they're getting the jersey or something else and then get something else. So this first ticket is for this really nice Chicago Bears hat. the problem with doing this. William Fumpson? Is this Fumpson? How would you read that? William, are you still here? Bill Fumpson, where? Oh, come on up, buddy. Come on up. We're going to need 3 forms of ID. No, I'm just. Here you go. No. You're all set. I don't need anything. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. He was actually going to do it. All right. And if you've been listening to The Score, you've probably heard this ad nauseum, but I have a new company now. It's called Chicago Football Magazine, chicagofootball.com. And the good folks that I've worked with have donated a subscription for the year. It's a premium subscription. It's an $80 value. And this lovely young lady is going to pull out a winner for us. And this is going to go to Joe Condreva. Joe, where are you at? Sounds like all the winners are in the back. Am I going to... Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. They were all screaming over there. I don't know what that was all about. Here you go. All right, guys, and I think are we ready for the big winner here? Oh, we have some fantasy football. Oh, no, I'm sorry, fantasyalarm.com, and we have 3 fantasy football draft guides for you. So let's pull 3 tickets. Matt Forte on the cover, very wise newsstand marketing here in Chicago. Mike Ledusky. Mike, are you